So this is a very important discussion that we have to have, and it's all about what the black man benefits from with these current Trump tariffs. So one of the first things to understand, what is a finished good? A finished good is a very important thing to understand if you're going to talk economist language, economist talk. Because what happens is there are two types of economists. There are the Wall Street only or Wall Street primary economist, meaning that everything out of his mouth is for the benefit of speculators and day traders. And I can prove it in a debate because 70% of that economist's suggestions or talking points will be from a return on investment mentality. He can't get away from it. Okay. Then you have the other type of economist, which is someone who talks mainly about Main Street and how Main Street benefits more than Wall Street. Okay. If you don't even know what Main Street is, then it's hard to have these economist conversations. Now that you understand about that, go research what classifies as a finished good. I know this is boring, but this is some high level thinking that the intellectual black men gotta really soak up. Not the reactionary black man, not the entertainment, giggly joke black man, but the high cerebral black man. You gotta understand what the whole finished goods is. So once you research that, you'll find that finished goods outside of America, that concept is totally different from assemblers within America. These are definitions of finished goods. But a finished good inside of a country, those items that came to create that finished good, they also have the ability to be recorded as a GDP product, unlike an outside finished good. Let me give you this example. So if you have an iPhone, even though I look at iPhones as a trinket, it is not, it's a current trend that everybody partakes of. If Ericsson or the black man who owns figure phones, if the black man who owns figure phones was to come out with a better phone than an iPhone tomorrow, and he was to do all of his, and that figure phone became the number one trend, the way a BlackBerry used to be, the way a Ericsson used to be. I used to have a TriPhone, a Samsung TriPhone when I was traveling. See, all these things at some point in time were similar to an iPhone on the trend percentage, like 80% trend, before the iPhone really got power in the trend market. There's a lot of trends every 10 to 15 years. So I know this is kind of boring information, but again, this is information you really need to know if you're going to intellectually debate people on the topic of tariffs. And if you can't open your mind to understand this level of it, then it's going to be hard to defeat the mayonnaise man in a debate, because you're going to have to agree with some things the mayonnaise man say in order to unravel the lie that he just told the public. So, finished goods, the things that it takes to make a finished good inside America, finished good outside America. So let's use the figure phone. The figure phone, it has a camera screen, it has circuitry, it has, but let's stick with the camera screen. It has the camera screen, it has the glass screen. Let's just leave it for those two. All right. There are certain items on the figure phone or iPhone where the part is not considered a finished product as far as the GDP is concerned. The GDP should never truly be considered, because the GDP picks and chooses, and it really depends on whether you're allowed to report. So GDP is not a good measurement, but it's the best measurement people have. And that's why people quote it so much. So that camera lens can be a finished good, right? Inside of America, inside of a country, it would be classified as a finished good, because the sand that it took to produce it, a lot of people don't know glass is made out of sand. The artistry to bring it to a resolve, that product, that could be considered a finished good inside of America, but it would never be considered a finished good if it was brought from outside of America. That's the difference. So the GDP grows greater because you're able to possibly, if they allow you to report that camera lens on the figure phone to the government, and the government adds those numbers to the GDP. Please remember, the GDP is still speculation. It's still a viewpoint. It's not a real-time thing, okay? But since people like to use it, let's explain it. So you have that, and you gotta excuse me because I'm working while I'm holding this conversation with you. You have that, and you have the camera glass, your screen. Now, inside of America, depending on if the government allows you, you can classify that as a finished good, especially if you're producing millions of those screens. Government will allow you to class, but outside of America, you're not allowed to classify that, because that goes to the GDP of another person's country, not yours. So when you send all these things from outside of America into America, it can't be part of their GDP, but as an assembler, once it's finished, now you can classify it as a part of the GDP. So just understand, just the example I gave you, the camera lens, the screen, the phone itself. You got three possibilities that classify into the GDP, making it appear larger because of the numbers that you're able to add to it, minus an outside to where you can't take those numbers for the camera lens or the screen. You can only take it for the finished assembler. Now you're starting to understand tariffs. Rewind if you don't understand. Now you're starting to understand tariffs, because it is better to assemble those things within the country, because now you get to have multiple GDP approved numbers as opposed to outside the country where your numbers are always going to be minus. And then here's the other thing economists won't tell you. That finished good really doesn't count. It's your sale of the finished good. Let's talk about it, because most black men, we're not able to hold these type of conversations because we're constantly arguing with each other and trying to fist fight each other over some stupid dating or woman or sex related reason. But once we get into really understanding how this works, then you'll quickly understand that, oh, that's why this is important or that is important. Because if I have a company inside of America that's paying some little 18-year-old kid who has a GED or had a felony and now he's just looking for a job, I'm able to pay him like they did in 1950, some little $7 an hour job making camera lenses, then that does matter. That job is there for that guy. You feel me? So when people say who's going to do the job, you got to understand Chinese people many times train 2 to 4 years just before they're allowed to work in some of these facilities. You can do the same thing on the job training, on the job training, on the job training with the American worker. Chinese worker gets $3.50. The highest I've seen some get is $3.90 an hour. Most get way below that. Most only make $50 an hour. But the highest wage I saw was $3.90. When you're paying somebody $7 an hour in Arkansas, in lower part of Michigan, and somebody's going to pick up the job. Stop acting as if nobody's going to do those jobs. Somebody's going to pick up the job. When all you're doing is paying a little bit less than twice the amount of the $3.90. So what's the difference? What's the difference? That $3 and what? $3.10? That's how is that killing you per hour for the same product? This is why this stuff makes no sense, because once you understand how economists who are only talking about a slave labor return on investment, and they flood 80% of the TV conversation that you're hearing, then yes, you're going to hear a guy like Mr. Research breaking down in a different way, and now you, the person listening at home on your couch, is like, oh, well, that makes more sense, right? Which is why we need to stop having these economists in a bubble. They need to be able to compete on these intellectual conversations and not just have the echo chamber of believe me because I'm an economist. Mr. Research is not an economist. You're right, but I can explain it better than you can explain it to the general non-economist community. Well, what about this? What about that? Okay, we can do whataboutism all day long. It just breaks down to this. The people who are not part of Wall Street have a different view of tariffs and how it affects their GED son, their just got out of jail daughter, as opposed to you who are looking for slave labor for that Xbox. If the Xbox is made here and it costs $100-$200 made in China, and now it costs $250-$275, what's wrong with the extra $50-$75? It's made in America. What's the problem? And it probably wouldn't even be that much, because it's only $3.10 extra than what you would pay China per hour if I had the manufacturing thing in Arkansas. But I'm going to stop it right here, man. If this was enlightening to you, I know it was a little bit boring, but sometimes, high-level information is boring. Leave a donation with Mr. Research. Much love to you guys. Leave a comment in the comment section. I would love to hear some intellectual conversations about this, and I'll try to do another one after I knock out some work. Much love. We'll be talking to you soon.